Think we're ready. Think we are. Let's roll. Welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Feliz Viernes. Hashtag Nachin and Friends. Hashtag Quickie News. Tonight we're going to be bringing you a different kind of show. And it's going to be different because we want to focus on things that are really happening out there. And we want to discuss with our series that we've been discussing for the last couple of weeks, which is reality based. And we talk about things that are really happening. For example, drugs. Last week we had somebody speaking to us about OnlyFans, what it is. And it's pretty much like legalized stripping, legalized sex shows. We looked at it and we realized that the page is a little bit more than that. However, the primary reason why people go there is to make money, exploiting their bodies, not necessarily in a bad way, but just utilizing them as an item to make a buck with other people's mindset. And with that being said, it brought us to a discussion the entire week, and we realized that it's such a broad topic that we wanted to kind of like take it in different chapters. Last week, it was more like, what is OnlyFans? The previous week, we were talking with our friend Pulpo, who couldn't join us tonight, nor Charlie. They're a little bit busy doing things, personal things. But I want to bring you information that we gathered together, and we wanted to share with you. But before we do that, I want to thank our friends at isoautos.com. Nuestros amigos que te consiguen un carro. They can find you any car that you're looking for at a great price, and they work with you with the financing, and they also provide you warranties and the full 9 yards, in-house financing, and all the elements that you need to get your hands on the best car that you're looking for at a great price. isoautos.com. With that being said, well, a lot of things happening during the week. Por ejemplo, today, another thing that happened is that starting March 12th, the news came out, Universal Studios Hollywood will be open. And they're going to be opening up mostly in the dining areas. The games and all these rides are not going to be open. And so are like the other theme parks. For instance, Knott's Berry Farm, today they opened up for the restaurants. Disneyland is soon to be opening. They started doing California Adventure. So good things, good reasons to move forward and kind of forget todo este pinche desmadre that's been killing us, Ay, wait, enough about that. So, a ver qué pasa. Other things, they're doing a lot of good things. The government's coming in, stepping up, FEMA, and they're actually providing vaccines para la gente in the low-income family areas, like, for instance, South Central, Southgate, like the underserved communities as they're known. And today they launched it along with a lot of LA officials, and they're bringing this service to everybody that pretty much wouldn't be able to access vaccine sooner. So they're going to do it because they feel like if they attack the areas where it's more problematic, well, they can actually eradicate it faster. So está bien. Felicidades to the officials in LA for making it happen and for FEMA. And hopefully everybody gets it soon enough, Y bueno, pues otras cosas that are happening. California, ya dije, ¿verdad? Y también los pinches stadiums after, pues ya se acabó, ¿no? Let's bring it into a topic. Let's talk about what we've been talking about this entire, I guess, month with our friend Pulpo and with Charlie and with Heidi. And the different people that have been part of the show. We've been talking about kind of like the underground world. We started talking about, how the world is ran by corporations, and these corporations have an agenda. And as you bring it down, basically, within that, I guess, pyramid of hierarchy, you basically get a world that is a subworld that is full of, I guess you can call it the indecent things, like, underground partying, drugs, all these other things known as demon-like things. So we got into it in so many different ways, spiritually, practically, and from a human perspective. And today, we're going to be kind of like analyzing what an addiction is. As it says right here in the dictionary, it's the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. And a lot of people think like most addictions are tied to drugs. And of course, the majority are. For instance, a lot of people are tied to a lot of prescription drugs, the elderly, because of the pain, because they don't want to feel life anymore, because they're depressed, because nowadays there's a drug for anything. So we live in that kind of another legalized way of looking at drugs, but we also live in the underground world where drugs are like kind of like amping and changing every second, every time that you get a chance to. You hear on the news that, oh, there's this new drugs. We were talking about DMT, the new drug that's out there that's 10 times like more potent than the ones that are out there right now, like crystal and meth. So imagine it gets to a point where human mind is trying to achieve such a different state of mind in itself that it's just trying to alter its mind at every cost. They're kind of like sacrificing their bodies, trying to kind of like go into their mind and going into, I guess, a virtual dreamlike trip. Because last week when we talked to our friend Pulpo, he was mentioning to us that obviously there's two types of hallucinogens, you know. For instance, the natural way, which is more like the hippie way, which is peyote, mushrooms, marijuana, and things of that nature, right? But then on the other side, you have the controlled substances, like I was mentioning, the pills, and you have the underground drugs like PCP, Coke, EMT, all these different drugs that are out there, right? I don't even have the names for all of them. But the idea is that one is to give you like a mind high where you open up your third eye and you basically allow yourself and your mind and your body and your spirit to be disconnected and connected at the same time by traveling to other dimensions, as they say, right? Well, to each his own. And then on the other side, you have the other side that is more codependent and dependent on the actual fabricated drug that it's being put out there, the synthetic drug. And that's when you start getting into the addiction problem. Why? Because the mind is asking for it. Once I remember speaking to a friend of mine who kind of was like a nerd in the in the subject and in the street level. His name was David, and I remember him telling me that one time he got so into doing cocaine that it became an addiction, that everything he did was to work for that drug. It's until he hit rock bottom, that he was sleeping under a car, that he realized that, man, he was better than that, right? So it took a lot of guts. It took a lot of, I guess, psychological movement in his mind to retract himself. But as Pulpo was saying, getting in is easy, but getting out is hard because your mind is already depending on it. Your mind is already expecting a different feel. It's already expecting, I guess, that high, right? It's dependent on it. So what they were saying is that amongst all these drugs that are out there, and when people get into them, what really happens inside the mind, as David was saying, is that your mind has a gland. And that gland, it's a gland like a raisin, where it actually shoots out and spits out liquid, like a chemical in your brain to balance your brain. And it's called dopamine. That's why a lot of the drugs are known as dope. Hey, what's up? Where's the dope? Because it squeezes that raisin when you do that drug. I'm not encouraging anybody to do it, but just talking from a perspective of knowledge. And it squeezes it out like at a massive rate, that it actually creates that kind of like euphoric mind field in your own brain that makes you feel like you're in another dimension, you're flying, you're somewhere else, right? And after the drug passes, obviously is when the chemical kind of like dies down. But that's why a lot of people have withdrawals. They're kind of like anxious. They're all panicking because their brain is out of balance, because they had a big abuse of that gland with that drug. It induced it to produce like a quick shot. And when the brain is kind of like emptied out and it doesn't have that balance chemicals, I apologize. That's when people start like, doing anything and everything to get back to that high because it was so good, but yet the only way to do it is by being hooked on that drug. So there are different ways of getting into it if we want to continue in the realm of drugs. But a lot of people say that it takes therapy, but more than anything, it takes acceptance by the loved ones. The person that is in drugs is somebody that is hurt in a deeper level. They have a cut and they don't have a way of curing it, of kind of like amending it. They need a way. A lot of people need that love side from family members and that support, but realize that they're not the same person. They're already seen another world. They're in another frequency. And not treat them like crazy, but treat them as, a different individual. Hey, hi, how are you? Like, for instance, I have a neighbor right here that before he was real cool. And then afterwards, I started noticing him changing. And then, you can tell the signs. And at the end, I realized that, he's in his own journey. Well, I realized that he's been on medication for depression. And I guess it's gotten so crazy that now the medication's not even working. So let's just be patient with one another when we find a loved one or somebody that we know, a friend that may be into an addiction of a drug type. So that's one side of addictions. The other side comes from the topic that we discussed last week, OnlyFans, which is the sex side, the fetish side, the more primitive feel side that brings that animal instinct in you that tries to look for that mental satisfaction, whether you consider it weird or not. For instance, foot fetishes. People I like to see feed. I have a friend of mine that says that she's always getting hit up on the DM. People are asking her, hey, can you send me some pictures of your feet and I'll pay you $500? I doubt it. She has like ugly feet, right? But to each his own, right? The idea is that there's a lot of different factors that move different people out there. And they say that it's all based on the conditioning, meaning in the upbringing, where you grew up, what you've seen, what you experienced, the world that you were exposed to. So that trigger an emotional kind of like trigger, whether you were growing up as a boy and you used to see ladies in sandals and you thought that was attractive. Your mind relates it to that. So that's another addiction that can be caused by the second factor, which is conditioning, the way you grew up. And they say that those things, the only way to treat it is to talk to a psychologist, somebody that's more in the profession of expanding your mind and kind of like allowing you to see your life from a kind of chapter way, like in a book, and you kind of read through them and then you understand why so, and you kind of, you move on, right? You make peace with yourself. And you have the other kind of addiction, which is crazy. A lot of people get into gambling. I know people that are like dear gamblers and they're good at it. They make tons of money at it. I couldn't get into it because my energy is not 100% into it because I'm not at that level that they are. And, those people, to them, it works out. But for some, they lose their families. They lose everything they have. So the best way to look at it is like, control that. Try to control that. See the value. What is worth more? Your personal ego satisfaction of a moment of winning versus losing and then losing it all, losing your family. So those are things to consider when you get into that addiction. The other type of addiction is buying, shopping. A lot of people say that is mainly the prime factor now, that we're in a kind of like, international market world where you can buy anything from around the world and you're pretty much pitched an idea of what it needs to be and how to be and how you need to fit in. And that's the consumer culture. And they said that it's become such a big problem that, for instance, there's a lot of people in Mexico, especially like in like the higher states, that are really into the plastic surgery side. And, they all want to look like Mexican Barbies. It's called the buchonas. But all this is created by the Kardashian movement, all these like socialite people of the way they have to be. But what experts are saying is that you got to come in contact with your being and really realize who you are as a person and realize that you're not somebody that is kind of like getting energy by people's opinions. Because if you're in that route, you're never going to win. You're just going to be going into a downhill, that you're going to be crashing yourself down into a bigger depression because, come on, let's face it, we're all going to get older. We're all going to change physically. But, some people, that's not a factor that they want to consider. So just know the price you have to pay. But the idea behind it all is you got to be realistic. And when you're realistic, you realize that superficial stuff, it's just that. It's things that are kind of like outside, outside of your realm. If you want to feel good and look good, great. Awesome. But see what you have to pay. not only for the surgery, but in the long run. The other addiction that is very popular now and is, I guess, one of the highest ranks in the surveys that we've kind of like looked at, it's the addiction to being on social media on this, the idea that you basically have to be hooked on it. You have to be on it 24/7. You have to be looking at this digital magazine, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Reddit, whether it's YouTube, which is good. Thank you. Subscribe. We try to bring you something that's going to kind of like make you see life differently. So applause for us. Thank you. But the idea is this, that you must learn to detach. What experts are saying to make that happen when you're really hooked on your computer or any social media platform or anything that connects you to the internet, as they call it, the web. You're inside a web. You're like kind of in the matrix. You're in the world inside a world that's being fed to you, and it's like kind of like a digital magazine, and we kind of like enjoy it, and we see it as, wow, it's cool, A lot of us use it for, like marketing purposes and to be entertained when you're in the restroom looking at memes. I mean, it's fun. I can go on and talk about all the pluses and all the good things behind it. But what experts are saying is this: you got to take a chill pill. Realize that you got to go back to the basics and look at a life at the real world. Like, for instance, if you're a parent, you're a young parent, realize that you're not always going to be young. Your kids are not always going to be babies. Time is passing you. And when you look back at it, the basic idea is not to have any kind of regrets, but mainly have memories. So try to detach from it. And a lot of people don't have the guts to talk to each other about it, and they'd rather be lost in that world than to really come up to one another and say, you know what? La estamos cagando, güey. Like, really, like, we don't even hug each other. You're liking pictures of these people. I'm liking pictures of these people, and we're not really connecting. So what they're saying is that try to be more real with yourself and try to come back to reality and value what you have in front of you, and have the guts to talk to your partner. If you're afraid, tell them what it means to you for you to have their attention. So get on that level and try to be a little bit more, I guess, practical, try to do activities that are kind of like more physical driven. For instance, walking together, playing sport with the kids, like throwing a ball. I don't know, something that is outside the web. So they say it's good to do that too, because in all these things, addictions, vices, all these things that control you, the only way to kind of like evade them and get away from them little by little is by getting yourself and your mind into a physical activity. Exercise is a great way. A lot of us right now haven't gone to the gym, as you can tell. But the idea is to not give up and not become complacent and just be sitting down. Rather, go out and walk. Do something that's going to keep your mind flowing. Because when you do a physical activity, what is happening is your body's producing different kinds of chemicals, more oxygen into the brain. It's kind of like washing and getting rid of the bad stuff that's in there. And believe me, after you exercise, you're a different human being. So they urge to do that, and also to not be afraid to see reality. Hey, if you're at the bottom, hey, get back up. You're not the first, you're not the last. We're all in this together. Nobody has the instructions. Some of them do come with instructions that have been provided differently. But if you're at the bottom, or you hit a point in your life where you feel like you don't know where to go, maybe it's time for you to write a different direction plan. Don't be afraid to. But the worst thing to do is to be a victim of the circumstance and of yourself. Get out of that personal jail that you might have inside of you that is preventing you from seeing reality, from seeing all the beautiful things that you have in front of you. And stop putting band-aids that are just kind of like putting these emotional things to the side. Stop doing drugs. Stop doing OnlyFans, cabrones, which is hornies. And get away from your phone a little. try to live a little bit more of a normal life. Try to be more with your loved ones. And if you don't have loved ones, try to concentrate on doing activities that will get you closer to that. And if you're done, like, living a effed up life with vices and drugs and, like, kind of like, man, that's it. Realize it's one step at a time. Get back up and do it. But if you like being there, to each his own, right? With that being said, I thank you so much for joining me and bringing you some information that I guess I learned throughout the week with my friends and from practical experience. I'm currently working with my friend El Pulpo on the documentary Based in Addictions on Drugs. We're going out into the streets of Santana, California, and we're going to be talking to real drug addicts, people that are living in the streets because of the drugs. And so far we've done a pretty good job. We're kind of halfway through it, and we met individuals that are so hooked on the drugs that they don't sleep for months, and they sleep like for an hour or two, but they're always on it. And the urge for them to be after that it's crazy. Crazy how the human mind can be controlled, right? With the drug, with the vice. I guess the one thing we can take from this show or episode tonight is do not let anything control you that can hinder you, your ability to be yourself. I thank you so much. My name is Ignacio Sandoval. And you can find me on Instagram at Nachingon, the same name as my channel. Please subscribe, like, comment, share. And I thank you for making me part of your world, whether it's tonight, tomorrow, or any other day. And just remember, life is a one-shot deal. Make the best of it and don't become a victim of the circumstance. Muchas gracias. Que Dios me los bendiga. Hasta el cielo, Maya Pa. Thank you to everybody that supports me and it's always there for me. Gracias, familia. I love you. Se cuidan. Have a great weekend. Let me see how I stop this. Chingas.